Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting, riveting, and amazing Propagandacast with me, your host, Imperial Dane, the one, the only master propaganda hero, like defender of the fatherland, off here to a glorious 1v1 on Vilshanka. In the west, it is Acehiro fighting for the Oberkommandist Germany, Deutschland. Here with elite armored, forming up with the Panzerdivision with elite 221s, emergency repairs, Panzer Commander, heat shells, and the Sturmtiger. And east it is Ruby, fighting for America, freedom, democracy, the free world. We're here with Airborne Rifle Company and Recon support, taking a role of the 2nd Infantry Division here on the receiving end of the Panzerlehr's assault here. And as always, a big hearty thanks to my page supporters, champion heroes, one and all. Without them and their support, the Propagandacast wouldn't be possible. Other people can join me from Patreon, they can donate. And of course, comment, like, subscribe. Anyways, got engagement here. Sturmhaus chanting, messing up Ruby's early game here with a dashing Sturmpioneer push here. The Sturmgewehrs making short work there of Roberts and Bobberts. Meanwhile, Kuhwagen hanging northwards here for Acehiro, going to secure the resource there while the Sturmpanzer doing the fighting. Very good there. Some players do it in the reverse, which you always find is a bit strange, since the Kuhwagen is better at grabbing points, and the Sturmpioneers are typically better at murdering the enemy. So, Acehiro in this regard, I think, got sort of the right order here. Fulton extended forwards there, Sturmpioneer is backing a bit off. He's obviously not going to try and grab the point, he just needs to keep his opponent off the field point, then grab some points out. So that, I think, is tactically selling there by Acehiro. And we got Ruby here with Recon support, with raid tactics, INR Pathfinders, airdrop command groups, the M8 Greyhound, and of course the M83 cluster bombs. Second filter squad there for Acehiro as the Ralph squad moving forwards here. Straight at the Kuhwagen there. M1 Garands firing off at the Kuhwagen. No support there from the infantry. I think Ruby here read the situation quite correctly. We can see now Acehiro securing this on the field point as Ruby swinging hard north. There we go. Did manage to grab it right before the Americans pushed hard in there. Two squads counter-attacking here. Note by the path that's been taken here, attacking from two different angles, making it harder here for Ruby's infantry to find safe cover, since, say they go for the heavy cover here, the squad here can fire at them, so that way creating crossfire. Thumbs up there to Acehiro. Tactically very good. Though of course we got more infantry around, so now the squad in the south is a bit isolated, but overall smart here what Acehiro did. I think fairly smart here tactically. Though of course could have filtered up in heavy cover there, that way negating some of the incoming fire from, say, the resistance of the riflemen. Still, interesting opening here in terms of, capping orders here, what being grabbed. The fuel in the south ends up, on the east, can say ends up with the Western German, northern fuel with the American. That said, the southern fuel is actually more connected here for Acehiro than northern fuel currently is for Ruby. So there's a lot here going on here, a lot of dashing maneuvers here between Ruby and Acehiro. Nice work here. Northern fuel secured there, western fuel. Of course, it's crucially not connected yet, so bit of a tough one there for Ruby. Bit of a tough one. Folks, they've been slowed a bit out, but the Americans are all taking losses. Trot on the way there. Guessing a 2-1 here from Acehiro, looking to maybe leverage the current situation here, the status quo, more in their favour by pushing in some motorization, some armoured cars here versus those for Dumpton armies. Kuban then repairs in there, could go for the 2-1 now. And we do get the armoured car here. Sturmpanzer flanking the Ralph squad here. Ralph squad there could actually get wiped out, which is pretty huge if Acehiro in the early game versus Ruby, and pop goes the weasel? No. That was pretty lucky there for Ruby. 2-1 halfway done. Heading towards the centre for the Fultz Grenadiers. Troops reinforcing healing here. Got the mechanized command post there for the platoon command post. Grab northern fuel point back here. I mean, Acehiro so far is just up to an amazing start here versus Ruby. And Ruby's just being aggressively pressured here by the Germans. Definitely a top spot here that Ruby's been put into, but they're so far not daunted here by these German assaults. And there you go, 2-1 out here, like the Panzer Speerwagen. Engaging the Ralph squad with the machine gun there on top. Fiercely tearing into them there. Lieutenant Fords here may have to go for Bazooka here to help fight against that armoured car, as that could definitely do a lot of damage with the machine gun here against Ruby's infantry and bleed out Ruby fairly aggressively. Ambulance for that for Ruby though. Some medical support there for America. Some of the fuel plan being seized here now by Ruby as the map now slightly swings back towards the more natural fault lines you'll see on this map. It's western fuel for the western base, eastern fuel for the eastern base, for example. More like split along the road. Ralph's got moving forward till he turns back up further. And there we go. It's equipping the men here with the M9 bazooka. Folks, the Sturmpanzer taking the lieutenant here. Lieutenant there being focused down. We can see there Acehiro strikes hard for Deutschland, using both the 2-1 and the Kuban. He just got engaged the Lieutenant. Possibly thinking he's going to be equipped with a bazooka there, and there we go. Push back Lieutenant Kuban with the damaged engine. But ultimately, heavy losses here for Ruby, and mostly focused on the armored cars, of course, meaning, you know, and the Kuban, that this is damage can be quickly fixed, not manpower damage. So that's pretty good there for Acehiro here. And again, bit of a problem there for Ruby as they did suffer some bleeding. We do get the M20 utility car, adding in their own lighter armored car here as the Germans. The M20 was just basically a stripped down version of the M8 Greyhound, removing the turret. It was more used for the escort work and basically supporting tank destroyers, actually. Also a bit as a command vehicle, so fun fact there. Folks, there was the Radford Lieutenant. We got Brandhand Granada here to prevent the Americans moving straight on the fuel point. Get disruptive play by Acehiro. Really not efficient work there from the German side. And really making things uncomfortable here for Ruby and the 2nd Infantry Division. Up north, they're pumping seas for the Radford there. 5th Cal firing up here for Ruby. Actually cancelled the M20 here. You know, there's an argument for both here. There's an argument for both. Might be worth there's something else coming here from Acehiro, like a flank half-track for someone with the looks of the Puma, in which case, of course, the M20 may not last long, so instead, you know, going for the Stuart light tank, you know, makes plenty of sense too. But an M20 could also be, you know, helpful here, but other way. Lieutenant being flanked by the Folks, we've still got that 2-1 added, no upgrade to the 2-3 in the south. We got the reaction space there with tank traps. Flak half-track halfway done, and we got the 5th Cal out here. That's going to be a problem there for Acehiro's infantry and the light vehicles. Armored car there unleashing hell. No upgrade still. Miracle Society doesn't want to upgrade, but I mean, considering most Oberkorps players just upgrade it because it increases the durability of the armored car, that is pretty good. Plus, of course, the other bonuses in theory. But anyways, Lieutenant being focused down with the armored car and the Kugelwagen. Good chance of wiping the Lieutenant in the south. We've got the Reations versus the Volksgrenadiere. Up north, 5th Cal Radford going full wits. Up north, Sturmpioneer further pushing towards northern states there. Back at base there for a Ruby. Nothing further in transpiring. 2-1 heading south there for the Reations, supported by the Volksgrenadiere. And back here, we do have medics up there for Acehiro. Flak half-track in the center there. 5th Cal quickly repositioning with its own pissing around still active. Reinforcing healing, and nothing further here for Ruby. No weapon racks, no grenades. Perhaps planning an airdrop combat group. That is not an impossibility here. Meanwhile, Acehiro wants those strikes for Deutschland. Rapid mechanized movements here with the 2-3 now and the flak half-track. Reinforcing healing here for Ruby. Our 5th Cal sitting up there with its mighty machine gun. 2-3 quickly backing off there. Lieutenant Norfolks alongside the Ralph squad, looking to perhaps flank around here. Acehiro's front line here by Scarf Point. Fuel point also rendered neutral, being sandbagged as well there. Ruby definitely in some rough waters here versus the Germans. But Ruby again remains not particularly flummoxed by this, and there you go. We do get the M5 1 Stuart light tank on the way here for Ruby. That's going to be a challenge here for Acehiro, as some of you might have noticed at this point, Acehiro doesn't actually have any anti-tank weapons. We're talking no Panzerschrecks, and of course, no Raketenwerfer. So that does mean the Stuart light tank here could be fairly effective versus Acehiro. And there's also a chance that the 2-3 could be knocked out here with a bit of bad luck there for Acehiro, or good luck for Ruby, depending on your perspective on matters. Southern fuel point there, of course, secured by the Germans. They got both fuel points. This is a significant advantage for Acehiro that could spiral out of control, but there you go. Grabbing all the fuel point there. Thumbs up to Ruby. Stuart light tank almost done. Folks are there being held under fire here by the 2 advancing Ralph squads there. Flak half-track rushing. Stuart light tank right around the corner. Got the 5th Cal here. Can't quite hit it, but if he could hit it, that'd be pretty good. Of course, it could just pop smoke, but we do have the Stuart out here, and that will definitely add some pressure here. In theory, Ruby could maybe consider like calling in a Greyhound pretty swiftly after the Stuart to then add more pressure to Acehiro, but that seems a tad unlikely. The Kenref on the way here though for Acehiro, and the Panzerlehr Panzerdivision. Makes a lot of sense, of course, now in particular the Stuart is out on the field, and again, crucially worth noting, Acehiro has 0 anti-tank weapons. 2-3 being fixed up, flak after they'll about to be repaired here, but still, with the Stuart here, Ruby has gained a strong pressure tool versus Acehiro for the time being, and can that way gain a bit of control of the map again here, which is definitely something Ruby very desperately needs. Another 5th kill for Ruby. Plenty of munitions being floated, still no weapon racks, or say airdrop combat groups. In fact, one thing to consider here, instead of going for that 5th kill, would be to say up for the airdrop combat group, go for that paratrooper squad plus a pack howitzer, and then upgrade those paratroopers with some extra firepower, like for example the Browning Knight machine guns. I think that could actually be a better investment here for Ruby than another 5th cal. That said, it's not like the 2nd 5th cal here is a bad choice at all. A 2nd 5th cal is still a very powerful tool as well, but I think again in terms of like just long-term investments, the airdrop combat group here could be the better value for Ruby. The south here points being seized, 5th cal repositioning, but still Ruby finally got some map control as Acehiro. Despite I would also say Acehiro's like initial successes in a lot of other ways, he was not able to turn this into like a victory point beat, interestingly enough, so that is something worth noting there as well. 2 to 3 they need repairs, could also use to secure the fuel point now. I mean that wouldn't be half bad their face here, that would of course mean even more fuel. That would again further push for that medium armor here over the Americans. Turn caught here by the 223 and the flak half track. Shot on the way the fusel will be the Schwer punted quarters. 5th cal stroking the set to a victory point in the Germans in the south. You got Ruby's Rifleman moving up there. Very good. Stewart being fixed up. Weapon rack up there for Ruby, and with plenty of munitions to spare. That's definitely not a bad idea. There you go. Double bar Rifleman will be a significant challenge there for Acehiro's infantry. South here, Raubsquad was the Volksgrenadiers. Sturmgewehr there on the squad, definitely giving the nature of the Rifleman there. In the centre, we got the Raubsquad pushed back by the flak half track Kugelwagen combo. We got the Stuart move here once more for Ruby and the 2nd Infantry. Flanking through here in the south, catching the forces off guard perhaps. And could have got transferred deeper flank, but there you go. Acehiro all the way, decides not to risk it, pulls back. Schwer punted quarters up to cover both the fuel point and the car point. Could further, I think, incentivize Acehiro to set up the 2 to 3 on the fuel point, and that way, yeah, double the fuel income from the point. Going from 7 fuel per minute to 14 fuel per minute, which is definitely really good. Now, now that Ruby's starting to get more of the map control here as Acehiro, securing just more fuel that way, I think, is a very smart idea. And of course also allows Acehiro to now just, surge faster towards a tank, which is definitely what the Germans want to do. Ruby, meanwhile, still some time for any armor here. Acehiro's fuel harassment was quite efficient early on. So, we'll take a bit more there for Ruby to really start pushing towards tanks on their own. Schwer punted quarters up, can be authorized already. And of course, consider some Orbs on. There we go. Orbs on the way there. Thumbs up to Acehiro and the Panzer in the southeast, Stuart 40. Volksgrenadiers hold up in the building, will not be able to assist them out of the Stuart light tank forever, but they will be able to buy some time. There you go, Lieutenant caught with the flak half track. The Bazooka shot goes off, but doesn't quite make a massive impact on the flak half track. And immediately the entire unit is pinned down to the ground like an insect. In fact, the Lieutenant himself just gets absolutely ripped apart. This Lieutenant Dan lost more than just his legs. Still being against the Fox in the centre, backing up the Raft squad in the process, backing off here. Orbison squad almost done here for Acehiro. Recon in position to deal with that American light tank. As for Ruby, could consider taking up now here. We got more bars handed out to the infantry, to the frontline troops. More menacing problems here for Acehiro's infantry and support weapons. But there you go, Lieutenant met not just by the Lieutenant surviving squad, met not just by the flak half track, but the Schwer punted quarters. There is 2 flak guns, which is definitely not what you want to run into in his infantry. Stood down forwards here. Almost got the flak half track. Got it. Bit of a blow there to Acehiro. Good kill there for Ruby, in particular since Ruby did not lose the Stuart light tank in the process. Close though. Very close. Acehiro stepped up some time before any armor. Ruby stepping also some time off from armor, and also worth noting, of course, here Ruby right now is definitely a bit exposed to Panther IV, having basically just, one bazooka. That is not going to stop a Panther IV in the game, that is. And certainly not one with Judson in the actual war, that is. Oh, depending on what shots. And anyways, salvaging the flak half track here. I mean, so far Acehiro's just playing this very smart. Moving ahead to 223, guessing they're a bit concerned about what's going on in the infantry, but I think, on the center of the infantry, but I think Acehiro would still prefer having it on the fuel point, honestly, for just, you know, getting up more fuel for those tanks faster. With this, it actually gives Ruby a chance to, like, catch up more significantly and, like, you know, outdo Acehiro possibly. So I feel like strategically, this is a bit of a misstep. I can understand the logic, and of course, a wiper that'd be really good, but I think, you know, there's a good chance Acehiro risks delaying his tank by at least, you know, a minute, maybe even 2, which would be a significant advantage here for Ruby. Also got those resistance formed into an anti-tank team. A pair of bazookas there. 223 close to veteran fleet. There were basically 3 major variants. 2-2 armored casters. They had the 2-1 with the machine. You had the 2-2 with the autocannon. And you had the 2-3, which is the command variant. This was also, shall we say, unofficial version, equipped with a, well, depending on perspective, light anti-tank or heavy anti-tank rifle, 2.8 centimeters. It's actually fairly effective, from what I can read too. As a fact, also that same gun was also used on lightly armored half-tracks in tank destroyer units, for reconnaissance units, sort of early to mid part of the war. Fun fact. Folks with the major here in the south, we got the 5th Cal there, basically in the centre. Ralph Squad advancing on the other side, and folks coming in as well there. Down to 2 men here, we can see Acehiro's forces are being pushed back here as Ruby launches a furious assault in the centre here. May want to consider some mortars for smoke screens here versus Acehiro's positions. And of course, Acehiro could simply benefit from maybe a light infantry gun. But I definitely think a priority should be getting that 2-3 back here on the fuel point and starting to push faster for that Panther. Ruby is not far from a Sherman now, and could actually now definitely have a good chance of getting our tank faster than the Germans, which is sort of like, again, one of the reasons why I want to be careful about that Pan 2-3 here, basically. So fortunately for Acehiro, Ruby is not pushing for the Sherman as fast as they could. Of course, it's possibly planning at Jackson instead, but I think right now Sherman's just going to be better, at least for now. There we go. Does start calling the Sherman. Blanhunter now there, right into Ruby's throng of GIs. Sandbags in the centre. Up north there we got Acehiro's Kuwagenbauer still alive, going point C. Armored car falling back there, close to 53. Also very close to the Panther 4, but again, could have had that Panther 4 up, you know, sooner. Had that 2-3 remained on the fuel point, he's got back to the fuel point pretty fast. So again, I feel like strategically they might have given Ruby just a small edge. Perhaps may not matter, but it could also cause Acehiro significant problems. But there you go, can go for the Panther 4 now. But definitely think he should. Of course, Acehiro may decide he wants something else instead, like a Panther or Sturmtiger. We'll of course have to see what he ends up with. But all in all, I would recommend the Panther 4 here. There you go. Cluster bombs unleashed here abruptly around the MD-34. Falling down there from above. The cluster bombs basically just a straight up copy of the German butterfly bombs, by the way. If you're wondering why they look so similar, the Americans just straight up ripped them off. So there was the Falcons here. Sherman force there for Ruby. Adding the 5th car on top here. Panther 4 there for Acehiro. Possibly in response to the Sherman here. Possibly not. All the way, bit of delay there. Panther 4 I would say. Got the armored car too there. So now Acehiro definitely will be getting more fuel out of that one. Still the 2-3 were usually overall I think a good investment for Acehiro, but could have been used a bit more efficiently. At least from my perspective. Stuart there being fixed up. Germans holding up the Sun Victor point here. Still we've got 311 versus 465 in this regard. Ruby again, despite this really rough start, you know, has still been able to like maintain a victory point lead, and he actually is like bleeding out Acehiro now. Panther 4 almost done. Second came from the Acehiro and the Panzerlehr Panzer Division as well. Sherman there being fixed up. Stuart in the south fixed up. Orbis on their moving ahead here with their machine guns and their bolt action rifles. Note the German this basically sort of represents like, you know, an actual Panzer Grenadier squadron that, you know, most Panzer Grenadiers throughout the war were like just basically like, you know, just 8 to 10 man with like 2 light machine guns, in this case, you know, half a squad there, and the rest of the bolt action rifle. Like the German infantry squad was built around the light machine gun, either the MD-34 or 42, or if they couldn't get that, like stuff like the MD-15 for example. But That was sort of the general sort of German infantry doctrine, and the rest of the squad was just like designed to support the machine gun. Anyways, up north here, Panther being hit, got the Sherman there versus the Panther 4 in the southeast too versus the Volksgrenadiers. The Kenner lands a shot but misses actually. Panther 4 to the Sherman down to half health. Is there being murdered. Jump squad here by the 5th Cal. Major in trouble with the Panther 4 Panzer Commandant halfway done. In the south, the heavy skirmish, you can see that Acehiro's forces pushed back by the bar building infantry. Artillery called in as well here. Bit of a close call there for the MD-34 crew. Very close call. Had Acehiro been a bit slower there, not been paying attention, that could have possibly cost them a machine gun there to the Americans. Panther 4 there, half health. Took a rear hit from the bazooka there. Flick for the tailpipe where the armoured side skirts, of course, and the actual wall would not have covered. Got the opposite here was the Stewart. Got bazooka fire as the Obersoldaten. One grenade off. Sherman move here for Ruby. South here, Panther 4's the rough squad there. Panther 4 close veterans, 1 here for Acehiro. And the German army. Ruby could go for another Sherman right now. I mean, just pushing out more tanks right now. Versus Acehiro, I think could just be a very solid strategy here. Means just more firepower as Acehiro. It's also not impossible. Ruby's just at this point thinking an M36 Jackson tank destroyer versus Acehiro. Definitely not an impossibility either. In fact, they can go for the M36 Jackson now. So we'll of course have to see which of these two options does Ruby pursue, or do they go for option C, which would be Scots. Panzer 4 reaching veterans 1 here for Acehiro and the Panzerlehr. Further shot. Then we do get the M36 Jackson here for Ruby. Panther 4 could of course do with some repairs. Troop reinforcing him. Sturm has been brought here to fix up the Panther 4. Acehiro definitely, I think, needs to focus more on the victory points at this rate. Definitely a bit, I think, of strategic oversight here by Acehiro at this point. All of a sudden, here is the echelons. Panther 4 almost fixed up. Reasons coming the flank against any possible armor push, of course, against the Obersoldaten. They're less great in there. Go Ketner back up the Obersoldaten. Pretty much precious. Ruby's still light tank out of there. Lieutenant Dashing Ford backed up the Sherman here. 5 kills, veterans, 1 game for the Sherman crew. Obersoldaten routed. And we finally got Acehiro with some light artillery here. The light 10 Panzerleger shots are seen. Meanwhile, Ruby's assault continues through the south center here. Major in the center about to get killed in a major way here by the Germans. Infantry being pushed back here as Ruby fails to make a breakthrough here against Acehiro. Units swapped out. The Major perished in service of democracy. Sherman there still with 5 kills. Panther 4 rolling ahead here. Could pop the heat shield and go for that Panther 4 Sherman maybe, though we've got the Jackson now, so probably not. Line of gun done. Cluster bombs again here by Ruby against Acehiro. So the big point remains in American hands. The Kedner in the center, they eat some deep, deep sauerkraut as the entire world around them pretty much explodes. Both the Kedners make out the cluster bombing alive-ish, and also don't get wiped in a treat afterwards. Panther 4 narrowly got the student knocked out here. Center being grabbed by the Volksgrenadiers in theory, but they're pinned down. Northern Point also seeing no real fighting name. Got a 5th cal covering that one up here. So Ruby, I think, right now has a pretty good idea what they want to, how they want to win, and that's just bleeding out Acehiro victory points. As Acehiro, this match has definitely shown a, well, bit of a lack of victory point control. So that is definitely a bit of an oversight here versus a Ruby. Or at least an escalated problem that got, escalated into a major problem. Initially, again, it doesn't necessarily matter as much because the match has gone on, and Acehiro just more consistently struggles to get the victory points under control. This definitely becomes a much bigger element in the fight. Scott on the way there for Ruby. Panther 4 the advancing right squad the echelons in the south. The Orbison being routed by the Sherman. Near Acehiro and that Kedner, pretty good stuff there for Acehiro, but the Panther 4 eventually 2 volleys nearly being knocked out here with the bazooka teams. Both rockets fail to penetrate. Bomb grenade off there, failed to make much of an impact on the right squad. Shown the south here pushing forwards for freedom. Backed up with the steward here. Scott halfway done. And up north, still nothing happening for Acehiro. We do have the line of gun providing some covering fire here, and no Panther 4. Perhaps Acehiro is streaming on the Sturmtiger here. Just tear out huge chunks of Ruby's army and the 2nd Infantry Division. We'll of course have to see if that's the case. Either way, Panther 4 being fixed up for Deutschland. Steward being held back here for... I'm not entirely sure what. Guessing maybe another angle of attack. And there we go. Got the M8A1. Scott here, as was also known, for Ruby, equipped with a 75mm howitzer. Was used to support infantry and armor on assaults. There was some pretty handy-dandy mobile artillery. Up north here, folks, with the Steward light tank here. Got an infantry pushing further northwards here for Ruby. Folks, a bit of trouble. Got the 5th caliber providing, or MG34, I mean, providing covering fire here, but against the Steward, that obviously does not amount to much. Acehiro still with no sign of army. He's got the fuel pretty much for like any of the main tanks, you know, from his strap and the quarters. So at this point, the Sturmtiger. Got to go for the Jagdpanzer here. That's only up the Jackson here. Panther 4 flanking in, no heat shells here. Show him there. Ooh, knocked out. Great kill here for Acehiro. Definitely add some pressure here to Ruby and America. In the center, they're fighting for the victory point continues. In the south here, cluster bombs almost wiping out the Sturm pioneers, also crucially denying Acehiro some time to secure that center victory or southern victory point. Acehiro still bleeding up manpower. So while he has plenty of fuel, he's just not able to invest or use it because again of the manpower shortage here. Jackson has the Panther 4 down to half health. Options what they almost wiped out. So yeah, heavy bleeding here. Panther 4 once more in serious need to repairs here for Acehiro. There we go though. Make use of the emergency repairs to expedite the repairs without needing the Sturm pioneers. Thumbs up. One reason I imagine why Elite Army in general is so popular is because emergency repairs are there, and it's a pretty good ability. 5th caliber wiped. Good work there by Acehiro's forces. We got 141 to 460 feet. Ruby there quick to replace the 5th caliber crew there with some fresh gentlemen. Steward rushing from the north here. Scott that keeps bombarding away here. 3 kills already for freedom and democracy. Another Scott here as Ruby just seizes upon the opportunity to further punish Acehiro's infantry, and I think that's actually at this point the right decision. By bleeding out Acehiro constantly, like they're basically forcing Acehiro to, like, you know, make a decision, like, you know, stall for the big tank, but again risk further bleeding or just being inactive, or, you know, just constantly forced but then bleed out, because it can really basically put sort of Acehiro into like a vicious spiral here. So I would say fairly sneakily down there by Ruby, but efficient. Up northeast, Stewart being hammered here with the Kenneth and the MD-34. Artillery calling in, well, specifically it's the cluster bombs, forcing Acehiro to once more abandon his positions by the center. Very nasty work, and there you go. MG cluster bombs there, plus Scott pretty much wiping out the infantry crew there, except for poor Wilhelm. I'm sure it's just scared stiff. Troops back here, reinforced from Ruby. Another assault here by the 2nd Infantry Division against the German positions. North remains eerily quiet with no real action there. Panther 4 was fixed up here, and again the bleeding of Acehiro continues. Like, so much fuel at this point, but just not the manpower to use. In fact, there we go, reinforcing more stuff. He is at this point effectively caught in a vicious circle. I think at this point he really should just accept, okay, can't reinforce everything, I need to slow down for a bit and start calling in more tanks. But he isn't, and this of course just further feeds then into, I think, Ruby's strategy. And looks like Ruby actually, oh, never mind. They just used the Scott crew to assist repairs elsewhere. Oh, no, they didn't. Ruby, you magnificent bastard. Actually switched the Steward crew up with the Scott crew, getting an ace Scott there. Brilliant. Thumbs up there to Ruby. Now that really adds some pressure there to Acehiro. Almost, there we go. Wipes the Kenneth, and the MD-34's almost gone as well here. Down they go. Really leveraging that veteran crew there. Panther 4 pushed forwards. Almost got the Scott, but the Jackson is about to knock out here Acehiro's Panther 4. blitzing away there, but it's not fast enough. You can't outrun the 90mm high armor piercing shells there, and the Panther IV explodes, leaving Acehiro now with no tanks. Academy has also been cleared out here. The situation is deteriorating rapidly now here for the German army. Ravscorp, there's the opposite dart. Up north here, grabbing the northern vector pump. We got the 5th guy there, we got the Stuart here. It's a really nasty situation here for Acehiro. We got Brandhunt going out of the Ravscorp, they're burning through them rapidly. All of a sudden here is the Ravscorp, they're tearing into them viciously and mercilessly. Volkswagen's been towards the center here for Acehiro. Ravscorp almost wiped out. And up north there, Acehiro is sent packing. Guessing at this point, Acehiro is betting everything on a Panther. Also, can't see why they still haven't called any tanks here. This definitely feels like a Panther. Nope. Back to reinforcing troops. Again, we can sort of see the issues that arise there with the sort of current strategy Acehiro has. Like, he's just bleeding out so hard there. And the Scots are definitely playing, I think, a significant role in this because they are very good at beating out enemy infantry if you let them. They are very good at it. 121 to 440. Pushing the center against the rear, and they're pushing them back. 116 versus 440. Scotsman by, and there we go. Takes out a fat chunk there of Acehiro's infantry. Almost got the unit of the line for them. We got 5 kills on it, but close to slowly approaching their SMT3. But right now, the situation of Acehiro is pretty rough. Such a strong early game and it's certainly a solid mid game, but sort of after the mid game, things seem to slightly go awry here for Acehiro. And the center got the footage of the Raf squad here, actually firing down the Recon, everyone's wiping it out. 18 kills and 20 kills. I mean, these Scots are just doing amazing work. Of course, again, part of this, of course, just using the veteran Stuart crew to immediately get Scott up there to ace level. Which definitely, I think, further makes the situation of Acehiro's infantry rough and very unsustainable in the long run. Finally got some more armor here for Acehiro and the Panzerlehr Panzerdivision. We do get another Panther IV here, but he will still need more armor. And again, he's got plenty of fuel. The issue again is not the fuel for Acehiro. The issue is just this constant draining of manpower. Partly I think through not particularly well set up engagement, but also too much defensive attritional warfare against Ruby's constant attacks. And of course, the addition of the Scots only further exacerbates these issues, and the Scots are very good at bleeding out an army there of their infantry. This is definitely making things tough here for Acehiro in the extreme. Panther IV right around the corner as Acehiro launches another assault in the center here. Definitely also feel like Acehiro in this regard has suffered from tunnel invasion, like over-focused on the center victory point, ignoring the southern and the northern points, but also crucially, ignoring resources for the opponent to harass. I feel like there's in this regard, Acehiro might have fallen into a bit of a pitfall there that so many players tend to do, which again is just over-focus on the center and ignore the rest of the map. 75 versus 433. Cloud squad almost wiped out. Panther IV with the damaged engine. Almost lost the Panther IV here. Jackson's going to finish off the Panther IV, I think, but that Acehiro is more or less out of the war here. Like, at this point, his chance of influencing Rupee's decisions with his own forces, I think, is pretty limited. The Scots are just going to shut down most of his attempt to use his infantry at this point as well. The Scots are just very efficient, as you can see there, in particular with some veterancy. They're going to become incredibly good. And there you go, full squad white. I think Acehiro at this point has dropped out. Yep. Just waiting for the game to register it. And there we go, GG, game over. A loss here for Acehiro, a victory for Rupee. Again, very strong start for Acehiro, but struggle, I think, to fully leverage it. Fully also, I think, struggle to fully utilize the 2-3. And I think after that, the sort of things just fell apart there for Acehiro. Partly again, too much tunnel invasion in the center. Ignored the rest of the map. Again, ignored the ability to disrupt Rupee's fuel supply and his income. And that way actually allowed Rupee to steadily build up an advantage over Acehiro. But also, I mean, Rupee also played well, good use of stuff like abilities like that, and also weathered that initial storm quite well. So, it's not like just Acehiro just did all wrong and Ruby did nothing right. I mean, Ruby also, I think, made some very good decisions that also, allowed them to, capitalize better on Acehiro's mistakes. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this match. You'll learn something from it. If you did, subscribe, like, share, comment on it. Tell a friend, tell a family, but don't your enemies. This is Imperial Link saying cheers. Thank you for watching. Till tomorrow again for a nice episode. Bye.